What's up, gamers? It's Above, and in today's video, I'll be showcasing how any team can complete a flawless run of our brand new raid, the Vow of the Disciple. For doing so, you'll be rewarded with an exclusive shader by the name of Divinity's Caress, which looks insane in my opinion, especially on weapons. If you're going for a flawless run, I'm going to assume that you have a decent understanding of the raid's mechanics. This guide will showcase safe strategies in each encounter, how you can clean up communication, which is easily the biggest downfall for most teams in this raid, and will also show how you can optimize your damage and better understand overall raid mechanics. Before we get into today's video, we actually have our first ever sponsored segment on the channel, and it's all thanks to you guys and your support. To be transparent, this keeps my family fed and the editor on the payroll, so if you guys enjoy the content, this really does help us continue to grow the channel and produce better content moving forward. So thank you again for your continued support. Now let's get into today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you guys by a mobile game you definitely haven't heard of before, and it happens to be the best mobile game of all time, Raid Shadow Legends. It has a ton of champions, over 600 now, and all of those champions come from unique factions with their own history in the world of Teleria. Today, let's meet fantasy's favorite bad guys, the Orcs. Orcs may get a bad rap in fantasy games, but they're not all bad. After a brutal war fought against the Bannerlords, High Elves, and Sacred Order, they were annexed from their homelands and are now seeking an alliance with Queen Ava, but we don't know her true motivations just yet. So if you want to find out more, play through the full campaign that has an amazing storyline. On top of this, these guys look really cool. You can see how much each orc is influenced by its tribe and personality in each design. One of my personal favorites is Seer. She's an absolute game changer with some of her abilities, especially in the endgame dungeons and clan bosses that you guys will get some of the dopest loot from. This is the best time to get started in Raid, and if you click my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll get unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion in Hyena, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill to keep you gaming, and an XP boost to grind out those levels quickly. And on top of this, you'll get a free ancient shard so you can summon some awesome champions as soon as you get in game. So what are you waiting for? Dive into Raid today. Diving into the opening of the raid, start by hard focusing on Savathun's clone. She has a hard-hitting attack, so you want to take her out as quickly as possible. And when she dies, the ads will despawn, allowing the gates to the raid to open. The main thing to be aware of in this encounter is your Pervading Darkness stacks. You want to stick near the barge as much as possible and clear ads as a unit. When the barge stops, make sure your fire team has a game plan for dividing up the encounter. I recommend 2 people focusing left, 2 middle, and 2 right each time the barge stops. This ensures that the abominations die quickly and that the knowledge stacks are collected in an organized manner. Other than that, simply keep an eye out for the void scorn grenades, screebs, and prioritize killing snipers as quickly as possible, and you should get through this encounter no problem. As you enter the pyramid and make your way past the first drop down, we will enter the first true encounter, the Acquisition. This one introduces mechanics that are used throughout the entirety of the raid, and a lot of people still don't know how this encounter actually works, even though once you understand it, it's actually quite simple. There are 3 obelisks placed in each corner of the room. I like to split into 3 teams of 2, with 2 people assigned to each obelisk. Each team will have 1 defender and 1 seeker. The defender has 2 jobs, the first of which is to keep ads away from the obelisk, especially the abated adherents, because if they damage it, it actually speeds up the obelisk's wipe timer. The second job is to give callouts to your seekers, and I'll be touching more on that role in a second. Your defender will also be responsible for the occasional unstoppable champion, so make sure you have some form of unstop equipped. After starting the encounter and clearing the first wave of ads, one of the 3 obelisks will display a symbol in its top row. This will tell you the location of where a taken knight will spawn. The defender will call this out, and the closest seeker will find the knight and kill it. Once dead, a second symbol will appear on that same obelisk, indicating which room the seeker needs to enter to kill a glyph keeper. Once in the room, a third callout will show up on that same obelisk yet again, indicating indicating which glyph keeper has the correct callout. You can kill both of them, but be sure to communicate the symbol that appears on the glyph keeper you were intended to kill. So in this case, my seeker will need to kill the glyph keeper on the dark side of the room and give me a callout that we will use to cleanse the obelisk. I recommend putting these in text chat to avoid confusion, as this encounter is lengthy and it's easy to forget your callouts as time has passed. Repeat this process 3 times, with the team that has the obelisk callouts guiding the comms for the entire raid group until their obelisk has been cleansed. Do this one obelisk at a time because it keeps comms much cleaner and will help you avoid silly wipes. Once all 3 callouts have been found, have each team member check their obelisks. Only one of them will contain all 3 of the required symbols, which indicates which obelisk will accept the cleanse. Once ready, team shot the symbols and cleanse the obelisk. Once an obelisk has been cleansed, it eliminates it from the next round of cleansing, making it easier to identify which obelisk will contain all 3 symbols in the later rounds. Once all 3 obelisks have been successfully cleansed, the encounter will complete, and we're moving on. Next up, we have the Caretaker. Now, this encounter caused a lot of teams problems on day 1 because it was a pretty significant damage check, but now that contest has been lifted, it's really not too bad. What I actually find to be the biggest recipe for failure is going too fast with the obelisk callouts, resulting in silly deaths to either pervading darkness or wiping to the obelisk timer because you attempt to cleanse before the obelisk even asks for your offering. These are common mistakes that come from rushing in and out of the vault, when in reality, as long as your team is stunning the Caretaker consistently, which is pretty easy to do, you have so much time to get the callouts that you need. I recommend having 2 people handling the obelisk cleansing, with 2 people stunning the Caretaker, and your other 2 focused on ad clear. Staying on top of ads is crucial for keeping your Caretaker team alive, especially with the snipers that spawn midway through the encounter. The cleanse team simply needs to keep tabs on their pervading darkness stacks and make sure that they communicate their 3 callouts to their teammate. Once the obelisk asks for the offering, simply team shot the symbols, then rinse and repeat 3 times to start DPS. Just make sure that you're communicating with the stun team so that they aren't exposing themselves to the boss unnecessarily. It takes a while for damage to actually start, so I recommend taking cover until you see the plate light up in front of you. And DPS will always start on the side that the Caretaker is walking up on. So if he's walking on the right ramp, the right plate will always light up first, indicating that the boss is now damageable. Things like Banner Shield and Well of Radiance do a great job keeping you alive here, especially against the darkness projectiles that are floating towards you. And though rockets do solid damage, I would recommend non-explosive DPS weapons to avoid dumb self-inflicted deaths. If you're struggling with damage on the top floor, I recommend saving supers for the final plate for that last bit of burst damage that you need to get through the final stand. Things like linear fusions, slug shotguns, snipers, and any other heavy weapon you want to use work great, but as I noted before, explosive weapons are a bit risky, but if you feel comfortable, feel free to use them as well. Next up, we have our first jumping puzzle, everybody's favorite thing in Destiny, and this one's been giving people a lot of issues. If you have any heavy ammo left over from the previous encounter, I recommend throwing on an eager edge sword and movement exotics like Stompies or Lion Rampants, and a subclass like Top Tree Dawn for our Warlocks. This will give you a lot more room for error on your jumps. The first section of the jumping puzzle consists of set platforms that zigzag up the side of the pyramid. Just be careful with your jumps and try to space yourselves out as much as possible so you don't Goomba your teammates. When you reach the first room, clear as a unit, then push forward to the second portion of the jumping puzzle. Now, the next few portions of the jumping puzzle are a bit trickier than the first because you actually need a teammate to manage a switch that will toggle the platforms, allowing your teammates to progress. Send your most confident jumper forward and have them communicate when you need them to flip the switch to give you your next platform. The only notable jump is the blind leap of faith around the corner when overlooking the worm, but this is where the movement exotics come in handy. From here, climb the rest of the way up, drop down into the next room, and the previous path will stabilize for your teammates, which means they no longer need to toggle the platforms. You will rinse rinse and repeat this process for the next 2 sections. One person forward, stabilize the path for your team, clear the room, rinse and repeat. Once the final path is stabilized, your entire team will need to make it to this door to progress to the exhibition encounter. Exhibition is all about communication and consistency. The ads aren't too threatening, but what can end your runs are missed callouts and slow ad clear. So for this, I recommend an overload SMG, some sort of ad clear secondary like Salvager's Salvo or the Forbearance if you have it, and weapons like Galahorn, Parasite, or a machine gun to clear groups of ads quickly. The mechanic is actually quite simple once you understand it. Relic holders can see one set of symbols while your teammates can see the others. These two must communicate what they see to each other because the goal is to identify the one symbol that is consistent across both sets of glyphs, which is used to open each door and progress the encounter. One thing that helps with these callouts is clearing the room of all enemies first, instead of trying to clear and get callouts at the same time. With the way timer extensions works, you'll have over a minute to run back and read callouts without getting shot by ads. This means you can spend the first half of the encounter slaying out and the second half opening the door to the next room. As you progress, more relics will be introduced along with additional sets of glyph keepers. The most important thing is to focus on doing the job that your relic dictates. If you're the shield holder, you need to be actively cleansing your teammates of the pervading darkness debuff, and make sure that you're calling out before you cleanse so that your teammates don't rocket themselves. If you're the acorn relic holder, you need to focus on killing the shielded taken knights that spawn once the glyph keepers are dead, and if you're the taken relic holder, you need to focus on cleansing any taken blights that you see. For the non-relic holders, you simply have to clear out the ads as quickly as you can while making sure that you don't run off and die to the pervading darkness debuff. If everyone focuses on their specific role, the encounter runs very smoothly, so pre-plan who will pick up each relic, which ensures that no one ends up with a job they're unfamiliar with. Combine that with what I previously said about focusing on ad clear first, and this encounter becomes much more manageable. The next jumping puzzle isn't nearly as troublesome as the first one, but can still lead to silly deaths if you're not careful. Stick together, clear all of the ads as a unit, and leave a bit of space between you and your teammates to avoid knocking each other off the ledge. Now it's time to face Rhulk, the Disciple of the Witness. This encounter takes everything we've learned and brings it all together. I do this encounter a little differently than most people, but I find my method to be extremely safe and easy to understand. Start by having one person break the pervading darkness object in the skybox, and have 2 people ready to shoot these smaller vessels on the right and left hand sides of the arena when they appear. You want these 3 people to transfer the leeching force buff throughout the entire encounter. I also recommend pre-assigning who will shoot each vessel when transferring buffs and having the same person dunk every single time. This keeps things extremely simple and makes the buff transfers a lot cleaner between you and your teammates. 2 people transfer the buff to keep it alive, while 1 person soaks up the boss's attack to acquire emanating force, allowing them to dunk. Having 1 person do this gives you more options on where to dunk, because there will always be 2 totems that will have a matching symbol to accept your deposit. So for example, if we have Traveler as our callout and my team tells me that I can bank at either R1, which is the closest right-hand side deposit, or L3, which is the furthest deposit on the left-hand side, I would have the choice to bank at R1, which is the much safer choice because it isn't surrounded by ad spawns. You can make this even safer by having your designated depositor running an Invis Hunter. Once deposited, have the transfer team step on the plate at the back of the arena and get ready to transfer the buff. The depositor will shoot the left vessel each time, while the transfer team shot the right. Rinse and repeat this process 3 times, and on the 4th deposit, have 2 people grab the leeching force debuff and soak up the boss's attack to dunk and start DPS. For damage, I recommend either Izanagi's Burden with rockets or Sleeper Simulant and a sniper. Both work extremely well, but you can of course use whatever you're comfortable with. There are also 2 game-changing DPS mods that you can equip to make this damage check attack very easy. Radiant Light will charge your teammates with light every time you pop a super, which you'll be doing at the start of each damage phase, while High Energy Fire will give you a free 20% bonus to your weapon damage. And since you aren't killing any adds, you'll have this buff for the entire boss fight. As for the boss fight itself, have one person take boss aggro and guide him around the outside edges of the room, while the rest of your team stays completely parallel to you. This will allow you to keep your team much safer, much more organized, and it's actually really easy to do this because the boss has a pretty significant tell on his attack. Simply watch for the yellow dash indicator on the ground and it'll tell you that he's about to charge. Then run at a 90-degree angle away from the attack and it will miss you every time. Wait for the AoE, then reposition back to the outside of the arena for the next bait. This will keep your team extremely safe, giving them lots of room to deposit their buffs. When DPS starts, wait for his physical appearance to change before popping supers, and keep an eye out for the AoE attacks. After your first damage phase, make sure you get finishers on the Glyph Keepers and Abominations to restock on heavy ammo so that your second phase is as clean as the first. Rinse and repeat this process until you get to DPS, and this time, your weapon damage should carry you to final stand. You want to save your supers here because they will help you get the burst damage you need to knock Rhulk into the dirt, making the Flawless Vow of the Disciple a GG. If you guys found this guide useful, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated, and I also stream helps on Twitch over at twitch.tv/above if you guys want to come check us out over there. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!